Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Organic Produce Summit. This is the first session. You're out early. I'm so proud of everyone. My name is Angie Gigello. I work with the Organic Trade Association. Seated next to me to my left are Andrew Manzi, he's the Director of Strategic Insights for Nielsen. And to his left is Susie Badaracco. She's the President and CEO of Culinary Tides. We have a 50-minute session this morning. There's a lot to pack in. We're going to save 10 minutes for you for Q&A at the end, so we are going to be expeditious. But we're here to talk about organic produce trends and current drivers and how you can anticipate what's next in the marketplace. Briefly, I'll tell you that the Organic Trade Association we represent 8,500 organic businesses across all 50 states, and that includes the full supply chain. Our mission is to promote and protect organic, and if you'd like more information on OTA, we'd be happy to talk with you. We're all over the show, and you can also reach us at ota.com. Very briefly, my boss, Laura Batcha, will be doing a keynote presentation this afternoon, and she'll present robust data about the organic industry and about organic produce specifically. But I did want to give you an idea of sort of the size of the prize. Total U.S. organic sales 2006 to 2015, about $39 billion in 2015, 43 if you count non-food, so fibers and other non-food items. That growth rate is about 10.6%, which compares to about 2.6% in the conventional food world, so pretty robust growth. And then in terms of the organic consumers who you would very much like to win over as your consumers, these consumers spend an average of $150 on weekly groceries compared to $121 for non-buyers. They skew heavily towards millennial consumers, which, as you may know, is very soon to become the largest consumer group. Millennials tend to identify with organic and both choose organic food when they can and also choose restaurants that they know favor organic products. And they also, this particular group of organic shoppers, they are willing to visit more grocery stores in order to get the organic products that they're seeking. So 51% are willing to visit 2 stores a week, and 27% of them are willing to visit 3 stores a week to get the products that they're looking for. So our idea is, if you're a retailer, carry the products they're looking for so they don't have to leave your store. They are willing to do it, but you'd prefer to keep them there. So having said that, I'm actually going to turn this over to Andrew so that he can talk about trends driving the industry currently. So please welcome.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? Perfect. Hi, I'm Andrew Manzi. I'm based out of New York City. I work for Nielsen, the market research company. And when Angela asked me to speak here today, I was like, my first question was like, oh, where's the conference? She's like, Monterey. I'm like, I will be there. Do not worry. I've never been to this part of California before. It's quite lovely. The purpose or my agenda today is sort of twofold, right? It's going to be pretty simple, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take you outside of your world a little bit, take you outside of organic produce, and talk about current health and wellness trends and then I'm going to speak about the future of health and wellness and where it's headed. But what I want to do is I'm going to take you outside of your world, but then I want to bring it all back in and talk about organic produce and what these things mean to organic produce. So Americans overall are more focused on their health and wellness, right? I'm not saying anything anyone doesn't know. People are exercising more. People are eating healthier. People are eating more fruits and vegetables. 45% are reading food labels to make healthier choices. People are choosing local, natural, and organic when possible. People will pay more for foods that promote health benefits. We know that. We know that people are more proactively looking at their health and wellness. But what does that mean to food? So when we talk about food, we're looking at 4 key things. And at Nielsen, we're looking at the basic food trends. We're trying to figure out, all right, what are the key talking points we have? How do we synthesize what's going on in the industry and really bring it back down and really simplify the messages that we're trying to tell when it comes to food, health, and wellness? And we brought it into 4 key things. First thing is back to basics. Back to basics eating. We know that consumers are focused on foods with simpler ingredients. People are focused on foods with fewer processed ingredients as well. And when you look at foods like organic and natural, they're outpacing the total store, and I'll get into data that shows that pretty clearly. The healthy indulgence, I'm sorry, but people aren't eating organic produce all day or just produce in general. People definitely still want to indulge, but what we're seeing is that growth in some of the more indulgent categories, there is a health and wellness component to those categories, and there is a driver there. even in categories that are typically indulgent, we're seeing growth with health and wellness characteristics. And also, a term we came up with is a food fight, the center store versus fresh perimeter mentality. So we're seeing that dollars are actually shifting to the perimeter of the stores, and we're seeing this happening across all retail channels as well. And then the last thing is food as medicine. So people are using food as medicine, both to manage ailments that they're suffering from, and also just to manage their general wellness, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. So when we get to this back to basics concept, right? So we're looking at a retail environment today that's fairly challenged when it comes to growth. The retail environment is growing around 2.5% per year at a total store basis. But when you look at natural foods, natural products are up 11%. When you look at organic products, they're up 16%, and GMO-free products are up 17%. So there's movement towards back to basics eating and simpler, less processed ingredients, and organic produce is absolutely a beneficiary of that trend. You know, these healthy claims, and we track healthy claims from a packaging perspective across the total store, across all channels. It's not just happening in one section of the store. It's not just happening in one category of the store. It's happening all across the store. And there's a lot more item counts as well. So GMO-free, there's about 200 more GMO-free items across the total retail environment. Natural is like another 239 on average items across the retail environment. Organic, 117. You see foods with ancient grains. There's this transparency-driven movement, so no artificial colors and flavors. Gluten-free, no high fructose corn syrup. We're seeing growth in all of these trends, and they're absolutely outpacing the total store, which is about 2 to 2.5%. You know, health and wellness is growing in some of these traditionally indulgent categories. So salty snacks is probably one of the best examples out there. So it's a $20 billion category. It's growing at 2.6% year over year. But if you look at natural salty snacks, they're growing at 8.3% year over year. And natural salty snacks are at about 9% of the total category sales now. We expect that number to continue to grow. Organic salty snacks, which is about 2% of category sales today in the total US, are up almost 21% year over year. So you're seeing these indulgent categories and categories that are typically indulgent, having this health and wellness driver component sitting underneath it, which we see and we think is going to continue for the foreseeable future. We see it in ice cream. We see it in a lot of different categories that are typically indulgent. And, salty snacks aren't just made from potatoes anymore. That's sort of an old model. So we have ancient grains, kale, quinoa, lentils are all sort of infiltrating this salty snack space and this snacking space, because when people are indulging, they want to do it a little bit more smartly. And we see that the fresh food perimeter of the store is growing. So what you're looking at here on this chart is in green is sort of the perimeter of the store, the produce and the seafood and the bakery section of the store. And then in blue, you're seeing the center store part of the store. So if you look at the trend over time, you see that 35.8 in 2013 was the share of the perimeter of the store, and it's at 36.8 now. So it's grown a full share point in 2 or 3 years, and that's a pretty significant number. You're like, it's one share point, but when you look at the total retail environment, you're talking about billions of dollars of shifting to the outside of the store. And that's part of, once again, so thinking about the broader trends that we're talking about, that back to basics movement, it's allowed the perimeter of the store to become more relevant and help differentiate retailers as well. But it's not just a fight within the store itself, it's a fight across retail channels. So now fresh foods and fresh products can be bought in a multitude of different channels. And if you look at retailer strategies today, they're all trying to figure out what is the right mix of center store products and fresh food products. You have the drugstore, the drug channel, and the numbers really represent this. So anyone who has shopped in that channel, what percentage of those people have purchased a fresh product in that channel? So drug, it's 19%. In convenience, it's 35%. Mass supercenter is 84%, and I expect that number to go up. In club, it's 88%, and in grocery, it's 99%, which makes sense. But the point here is this, that all these guys are trying to figure this out and figure out what that right mix of fresh and center store products is. So I said food is medicine. I meant that literally, because at Nielsen, we track people who suffer from certain disease states and have certain ailments. And what we see is but like when a diabetic is diagnosed, their behavior changes immediately in terms of what they're buying. So they're buying less refrigerated juices, less candy, less ice cream, less frozen novelties, less puddings, and buying more fresh strawberries, pre-cut fresh salad mix, fresh carrots, and fresh onions. So when you understand that, you realize that the fresh produce and organic produce to some extent is part of an ailment management process too. So there's a bigger consumer factor there as well. So where are we going? Where is this all headed? So I'm going to take you even further outside of your world a little bit and talk about what some of the drivers are of health and wellness today. So one thing is we have an aging population in the US. People are getting older, they're living longer, they're using the healthcare system more, they're using food as a way to sort of manage their health as well. The 65 plus population is going to grow around 36% over the next decade as well. So we see food being a big driver there into helping them manage themselves as they get into their older age. We have rising healthcare costs as well, which at this point are fairly unsustainable, but we don't see an end to that right now. And what people are doing as a result is they're making a lot of trade-offs. One, they're becoming more proactive with how they manage their health, so they don't have to use the healthcare system in the first place. Another thing they're doing is using over-the-counter medications as a sort of a first line of defense, self-diagnosing themselves, researching the products that they're looking for, and really managing themselves a little bit better so they don't have to utilize the healthcare system as much. There's an increase in chronic disease states like diabetes and obesity and hypertension. Some of that a function of just general diet, but really a function, I would say, of an aging population in the US. And that demand for food transparency is is one of the drivers as well, which I talked about. So the need to understand what's in the food that you're eating and a more simple and back to basics mentality. And then I think the top thing is technology access. I think that's really sort of an umbrella that sits over all of this, because we're able to now, at our fingertips, research the products that we use, understand what social causes these products stand for, understand what ingredients are in the food we eat and the beverages we consume, and kind of understand that process a little bit more and research our health and wellness, which allows us to be more proactive. And I mentioned before that retailers are trying to figure this out and figure out the fresh foods component, but retailers think about health and wellness a lot more broadly than just produce. It matters across the entire store. And like I said, if you look at retailer strategic initiatives, they're really focusing across the entire store. They're focusing on the center of the store, in the fresh perimeter of the store, the OTC and pharmacy, personal care products. Retailers are also making sure they're providing healthcare services, so above and beyond just flu shots. They're really focusing on their clinic business as well. So from a holistic sense, when you're dealing with retailers, health and wellness, this is what it means to them, is all of these things and all of these pieces. Retailers across all channels are really focusing on this. They're prioritizing healthy foods and better for you brands in center store. They're emphasizing the fresh and produce section of the store. They're training associates and using dietitians to make sure that they're giving consumers a chance to make healthier decisions in store. Focusing on specific health categories, you have retailers that focus on things like vitamins or allergy products or the beauty aisle. Focusing on specific ailment sufferers, so we know that retailers are focusing on diabetics or people with arthritis or older shoppers with specific medical conditions. And then increased healthcare-related services like retail clinics, which I mentioned before. But we think organic, sort of bring it back into the organic world, we think organic could be a differentiator in retail, and we showed based on the data, we see that it is. So we see that the top performing retailers in terms of fresh performance have a much higher percentage of organic produce in their store. So 12% for the top performing ones versus a lower percentage for the lesser performing ones. So taking it out of the retail space and thinking about the manufacturing environment. So looking at the top 25 food manufacturers, like I mentioned, all retailers across all channels are trying to figure out health and wellness and trying to figure out fresh and produce. The biggest food manufacturers are trying to do it too. They're trying to figure it out, because if you look at the top 25 food manufacturers over the last 4 years, they're not growing, they're flat. And they're trying to figure out, and they realize health and wellness and this broader health and wellness initiative is not going anywhere, and they're trying to get involved. Because if you look at the next 75 manufacturers after the top 10 are up 3.2% year over the last 4 years. Beyond the top 100 are up 6%. So these smaller, nimble players are coming into the market and eating up share from the biggest manufacturers. And they're paying attention to it, and they realize it. And so they realize that they need to get into the game as well. So they're doing a lot of different things. Reducing sugar, removing artificial colors and dyes and ingredients from the products that they produce, taking out the preservatives and dyes, using simpler, clean labels and sustainable ingredient sourcing, creating organic and natural versions of the products they have today. I've read several articles about manufacturers starting venture capital funds to identify smaller players in the natural and organic space. And then sometimes they're just outright acquiring companies. We're seeing that a lot lately, where bigger food manufacturers are coming in and just scooping up a smaller player to immediately give them a little more credibility in the health and wellness space and give themselves a positive health and wellness portfolio. But I've said a lot over the last 10 or so minutes, but I think the most important thing here is this health and wellness thing, it's not a one-size-fits-all game. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. So when you go to market and execute, it's really important that you understand what's going on from a consumer standpoint. Because if you look at some of the top health and wellness claims that are growing, lower income households under-index disproportionately with these claims, like natural and organic skew very heavily towards higher income households today. But what I would say is that retailers that cater to lower income demographics are trying to figure it out too, and trying to figure out how to get the cost and access component down right. We also know that some people just don't care about their health and wellness, and we see that pretty clearly in this data here, where in this segmentation that we use with our partner Natural Marketing Institute, NMI, this Eat, Drink, and Be Merry's under-index for produce, they under-index for vitamins and supplements, but they over-index for soft drinks. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, this group on the left, the well-beings, over-index for produce, they over-index for vitamins and supplements, they over-index for water. So they're more engaged. So kind of parsing out who your consumer is today and understanding where they are is really important as you move forward and as you try to execute across retail. And I think I mentioned it earlier, but I lead our health and wellness growth and strategy team. And what we're trying to do is understand, when I said health and wellness mattering across the entire store, we're trying to figure that out and making sure that we're speaking across the entire retail environment. And what we've come up is a pretty simple framework, but it applies absolutely to the organic produce world. And it's really this, like who or what influences the consumer, impacts what they eat, it impacts how they treat, and impacts where and how they seek care. So I think this first piece is really critical, the influencer of behavior. So what is the socioeconomic factors that are driving these three behaviors? What is the life stage that are driving these three behaviors as well? What is the access to retail? How does the healthcare professional feed into these three components as well? Because we're seeing things like healthcare professionals recommending produce diets to help manage specific ailments. How do media and technology play into it? How do social causes and sustainability feed into these three things? So we have the ability to think through this and help you understand within the context of the influencers and what that means in terms of the eat, treat, and seek care components. And here's my final slide. I'll just 4 quick takeaways for you today, and I'll be around all day, so I'm happy to have further discussions with you as well. This health and wellness, this proactive engagement in health and wellness it's not going anywhere. I need you to assess how organic produce fits into that health and wellness management, whether it's fruit for smoothies, whether it's lettuce to substitute for bread, whether it's a diabetic who just got diagnosed. How does organic produce fit into that? Or engage with retailers across all channels. They're all trying to figure this out as well. And if you understand their strategic initiatives, we think you can be really successful in identifying new opportunities and new avenues to engage with organic produce. We think it's a big growth opportunity. There's no one-size-fits-all strategy. The execution is all local. You can't just have a blanket strategy and execute against that. You need to understand the consumers very locally and execute there. And then being prepared for increased competition, because we think the health and wellness trend is here to stay, and making sure you're using your marketing dollars more effectively to win loyalty and to win share. So these are the 4 talking points. I know I've said a lot in a very short period of time. So I'm going to turn it over to Susie. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to say there's about 8 or 10 seats up front. Like in the first 3 rows, there's a whole bunch of seats that are open if you guys want to come up and not stand the whole time. So I'm going to introduce you. I'm just going to blab about myself anyways for a sec. Okay, so who we are. We're actually a private forecasting think tank. I have a group of 7. They're scattered across the states. I don't care if they're in their bathing suits when they're working, as long as they're by their phone and by their computer. 2 satellite offices. I'm sometimes working like that, mostly pajamas. 2 satellite offices, 1 in Tokyo, 1 in DC. Forecast work is actually, my background is actually military intelligence and chaos theory. So my background is, my BS is criminalistics. I was a criminalist in California for about 5 years. When I stopped stepping over dead bodies, at a young age, I naturally went into culinary school because it made sense at the time, and it still makes sense. So I am a certified chef, and then I didn't think I was smart enough, so I went back, and I am a registered dietitian. That's my master's. So I like to say I literally went from tracking serial killers to tracking cereal bars. it's all a pattern, it's fine. So what we do is, we don't tend to do syndicated reports and they show up in your mailbox. We actually partner in long-term on 1 to 5 year contracts with our clients where we act as their sidelong think tank. We're literally looking for patterns in chaos to aid their strategy or their marketing departments. So the custom monthly reports we give, we only work for the food industry, but what we're tracking for them is all government, technology, your adversary allies, your competitors, all research, clinical health research, consumer research, and then flavor and cuisine trends too. We marry all of those every single month. Our quarterly reports then push our clients out another 18 months, so every quarter you're kind of pushed out again. So I'll warn you, because the deck I'm going to show you, it's pretty short, but it's about 400 quantitative research reports that I had to go into making the couple slides. So don't worry about taking notes. If you want my side of the deck, just give me your card afterwards and I'll make sure you get it. So let's talk about consumers really quick. So first of all, going into, and we're still in a protracted recovery, behaviors change and attitude change. So the inspiration part is survey work that comes in. The translation is then behavioral research that we have to track worldwide. So priorities going into a recovery are, they want ease, they want efficiency in products. Why? Because we have to tell our clients why they're doing this. It's not enough to give them a top 10 list of something. It's because they're getting back to work, so they don't have as much time on their hands. So what we see is return to restaurants, convenience trumping budget. In other words, I will pay for something if I find it valuable to me. Brands are rebounding versus private label. Travel abroad goes up. Spending, again, if I value or if I find it worthy, such as organic category, I will pay for it. I will justify it. Why? Because my income is also going up. Coupon use goes down. Value trumps budget. Green spending and organic rebound. So when you see those two numbers rebounding, in research, you know you're going back into recovery. If you see them reversing, you may be heading towards recession. And trade-off trumps trade down. Just around food and flavor, they get more exotic. They want to be educated on the food. Where is it coming from? Who's growing it? They want to get a little more exploratory. That's why all the global cuisines come back in. Why? They don't have as much fear in general in the rest of their life. It makes them be a little more risk-taking across all ends of their life, not just food. So desserts come back into the spotlight. Exotic and experimental trump comfort. Luxury and indulgence rebound. Playfulness and risk returns. Even in the wine side, varietals, regions start expanding. This is a link diagram. This is one of the ways we organize chaos. So with the forecast going forward, you still have some recessionary holdovers, right? You're still got control, safety, security issues. Portion options are one way to control something. Transparency is another way for them to feel safe. What the food source is it authentic? Can I customize it? All of these are behaviors that are looking for out of companies and out of products. Foods themselves, there is the health piece, including kids, because I'm back to work, so how am I watching what the kids are eating? Mindful eating, anything that's free from, which is, of course, where organic can fall. Protein, but meatless protein or vegetable protein is the one that's kind of being the rock star. Invisibly healthy, again, don't tell them it's healthy. It's the surest way to lose a client. Like, just like, don't say that. Sustainability, again, is a big branch. So seasonal is actually kind of a cooler place to be than local. It's also more realistic. Organic, the concept of food waste. Foraged food is still going. Foraged, and it's not just fruits and vegetables. Foraged can also be different types of seafood, other plants. Foraged is a recovery behavior. You don't see it in recession. You would think you would see it in recession because you're going in your backyard and you're picking dandelions, but actually a foraging behavior is you're either wicked smart or dead crazy. So if someone shows up at your house with mushrooms they've picked, you let them start, you excuse yourself for another glass of wine, and if they're still sitting when you come back, then go ahead and eat the mushrooms they brought. But give them about 5 minutes to see how those mushrooms did with them. Pure motivation. On one side, you've got recovery behavior, escapism, indulgence. But on the other side, you've got more calm behavior, more recessionary, still clinging behavior, like authenticity, history, inspired stories, something that kind of grounds clients. And the clean slate brands, those are the brands that Andrew was talking about, where they're smaller, more nimble, move more quickly, very attractive to consumers. Sustainability. Again, lots of branches off of sustainability. Organic is one of them, but they have to marry in with the other branches for them to, what you're doing is you're kind of stacking trends. You're creating something that's a little more three-dimensional. So organic, consumers are confused which certification is which. Seasonal, whose season? Because now, Brazil has a season too, right? And if you're living in New York in the winter, you're not going to skip all oranges and citrus, right? You're going to get citrus in from somewhere. Local, how are they defining it? Are they hardcore and it's 150 miles? Is it just within my state? Is it within the country? Green, again, it's packaging. It's how are you growing it? Manufacturing sites, can you re-commerce the packaging? Ethical, like what are the hiring practices some consumers are even looking at? Animal welfare. What's the embedded benefit? So here's some research. These are the researchers on the left side. Some of the influencers, Gen Z willingness to pay more for sustainable products versus some of the other age groups. Gen Z is the first group to be born into sustainability. Gen Y was not, so millennials were not. So millennials sometimes talk a big game. Oh yeah, we totally will buy organic, but behavioral research does not show that they will do that. They will go for the dollar before they go for, oh, it's organic. Gen Z, the 18-year-olds and under, they actually are fully committed. Behavioral research and survey work shows they're fully committed. Also, many foods advertise sustainability in both marketing and packaging. The companies that are most successful are the ones that do it both ways. They don't just look at marketing, they don't just look at packaging, they actually are saying the same message both places. Washington State University, also sale of organic food and drink, expected to double by 2018. Still not enough to feed the world, but the need is there and the growth is there. Illinois, purchasing organic, there is a virtue in purchasing, but interestingly, it's more for produce. If you look at organic cookies, consumers kind of mistakenly think it tastes better. So they'll give consumers, identical products, say one's organic of cookies, and they're like, oh, this one tastes so much better. It's like, actually, we just fed you exactly the same thing. More families are up on making a greater deal to buy organic. And again, this goes with economics. So if we're in an upswing, yes, more are going to buy. They will abandon it. Americans will abandon it to an extent if you're in a recession. I'm just going to pull all these up. Some of the top descriptors from Hartman, fresh, clean, real, natural, no artificial flavors. All of this organic can fit in very nicely. So then when we look at health and some of those drivers behind, some of it is prevention, right? I'm trying to control, mood, muscle, vision health, digestion, fiber and grains kind of fits in there. Fiber, of course, also fits in with vegetables and fruits. Pure control ends up being a lot around disease states. So diabetes, my digestion, but then there's key products you can control. I can control salt in my diet or acrylamide. Apps, so technology, as Andrew had mentioned, apps. So how am I controlling where I am in the grocery store? What am I buying? Who has certain products? I can do that through my phone. And then the concept of simplify. It started in recession. It's still going strong in recovery. Unprocessed. What is the benefit? Like if I think there's a benefit, I will buy one product over another. Convenience, again, naturally healthy. Trust. This actually could be almost distrust. I distrust sustainability, I distrust food safety, I distrust organic and natural. I'm basically hoping you're just not lying to me, is what consumers are coming in with, and the health claims. So they want all of these things. They have a big trust issue with industry. And then obesity and cognitive function are probably the top two disease states where organic can play nicely. Cognitive function, especially because lots of items, from tea and coffee to blueberries, lots of other products fitting into the organic category cover cognitive function. And then obesity, again, you've got the snacking category you can play in, satiety, especially with the fiber, portion control, portion options. These two play very, very nicely with you. So there's two allies I want you to think about. So allies are not just other industry players. Allies can actually be a trend adjacent to your trend, or a trend that organic can play with. Breakfast is one of these trends. Breakfast is the hottest day part right now, the biggest growth numbers. So health-wise, there's a lot of reasons why breakfast is being touted by the medical industry. Those who eat breakfast, dopamine levels are up, aggression down, especially in teenagers, short-term memory up in boomers and above, focus is up, BMI is lower if you eat breakfast, diabetes, risk of diabetes goes down, heart disease goes down. Behaviorally, again, there's clinical and then there's behavior. 75% usually eat breakfast at home. What's easier than fresh organic produce? 15% do like to eat in the car, 10% eat at the desk. Many prefer assembling the meals from scratch or believing someone else assembled it from scratch if they're eating out. 48% now eat at non-traditional times, so breakfast is clockless. That's why so many restaurants are going to all-day breakfast. There's a reason. 63% it's unhealthy to skip breakfast. However, only 26% of these say they actually eat breakfast every day. Again, that's why you have to watch behavioral research, because what they say is not always what they do. And then when eating on the go, most like to grab something from home. It is more convenient. That's why it's a perfect place to play. Spending, breakfast food lovers are actually the ones fueling the restaurant traffic growth going into the recovery. What's happening is the traffic growth going into breakfast is higher than all of their day parts. And again, it's the first to disappear during recession because you'll eat a bowl of cereal or fruit at home. But those numbers start going up. So it's the economic numbers that we watch around this. But this is actually an ally to your category. Do you see? Another ally to your category I love is the whole fight with protein. And when I say fight, it's because it's actually a trend where there's infighting between the category itself. And it's between animal protein and plant proteins. Again, when you're talking about, some of this is around animal proteins. So satiety, great for all proteins. Unfortunately, when you're talking about animal protein, you've got increased fatigue, increased cholesterol, increased mortality, blood pressure, kidney failure, decreased cognitive function, increased colon and prostate cancer. That is animal protein. That's not the vegetable protein. So that's where the vegetable protein is kind of coming in a rock in this world. Behaviorally, red meat consumption is down, meatless Mondays are up, flexitarians are up. You all know, I'm sure, what flexitarians are. It's, I'm not vegetarian. I might, just have pasta with sauce for dinner with no meat. So flexitarian is I am sporadically vegetarian. But the protein desire is still there. Plant protein desire is up. Vegetarian and vegan choices are up. Technology, the top, are some of the hottest little technologies we have to track worldwide. So oat, hemp, pea protein. By the way, you know that pea protein is the hottest little vegetable protein. It's really because it's the cheapest. You probably know that. Everybody just thinks, oh, something's great about peas. I'm like, yes, something is. They're cheap. Chickpea flour is the hottest little flour. Chickpeas are a little rock star. Lentils, algae. The bottom four are just certain key products that have already been launched onto the marketplace for industry that are vegetable protein based. Those are just the names of them. NPD, consumption of meat snacks did increase, 18%. 24% are looking for more protein. 50% do think animal protein is the hottest, but it's still being outpaced by the vegetable. Mintel, Frost, and Sullivan looking at just the pea protein category launching. Legumes, increased peas, made up a whole lot of the new products coming out. And then Chicago, I love Chicago. Paleo diet has it wrong, which they do. I'm a dietitian, so I'm allowed to say that. Do not challenge me on this. Cavemen they say cavemen didn't eat carbs. Of course cavemen ate carbs. In fact, their jaw structure is set up for carbs, right? How hard is it to catch a saber-toothed tiger with a spear? It's kind of hard. So we know their jaw structure. Paleolithic man never actually ate the paleo diet. They mostly ate vegetation. So a lot of universities are coming against the paleo diet because it actually never existed. Okay. So this is another area you can partner with. So this is a morph, and a morph is important to understand. It's a shift in a trend. It's when a cousin steals the spotlight to a current trend. The reason you have to recognize a morph is because it does not mean the trend died. Because if you think a trend died, you could exit, and that could be a mistake. Morph it's just another cousin coming in. So you can play in all the areas. So during recession, you go into comfort food. You've got macaroni and cheese and meatloaf. During mid-recovery, you start getting into hybrid foods, stuffed, mashups, which is exactly where we are now. You get more into recovery. You get more back to fusion, which are flavors that don't naturally go together. And then when you really want to lose your mind, you go back into splattering things with molecular gastronomy and eating foam, right? And paying a lot for foam. Okay, so where we are right now is still in the hybrid stuffed foods. So when you think of that, they're all across the categories. So they are in the produce. Broccaflower, pluots, plumcots, pecatums. It's also in animals, beefaloes, iron-age pigs, those are hybrids. And then you've got the actual craziness like cronuts, brookies, Wookiees, cake pops, Nutella lasagna, that always takes me like 5 seconds to say. Ramen burgers, chicken and waffles is a mashup. And then stuffed, heaviest in the bakery category with pastas. Twinkies are actually a poster child. Cronuts are the poster child for hybrids. But then international foods, that a lot of these are based with produce. Stuffed grape leaves. You've also got pierogies with potatoes, let's say. Arancini, onigiri, the famous turducken, which we all are ashamed that started in America. But anyways, it is a stuffed food technically. And then all the beautiful vegetables you can stuff. Again, think of it as an ally. This is a way for organic to play inside these trends that already have strong traction, right? So you make alliances. So I'm going to bring these up quick. So just with the food forecast, you've got, and these are just poster children, right? But we're showing kind of more of the extremes. So the vegetables, chicory is a big category coming in. Seaweeds, the beans and the pulse category. Celery is actually being touted as a little rock star. Weeds are still hip and cool. Chilies are still hip and cool. The one thing I want to show you with vegetables and fruits in particular, you know you're in recovery when you see citrus and chilies coming back. Anything extreme on the palate is what comes back in recovery. It all goes back to applesauce and pears when you go into recession, goes back extreme, like seaweed, when you come into recovery. So these are patterns you can continue to watch. Around health, again, here comes protein. How am I feeding the kids? Is it free from full of fiber, nutrient dense, flexitarians? Seasonings and sauces. Interestingly, tea, which of course can be organic, is being used as a seasoning, right? So tea is not just a drink, same with coffee. Alcohol as a seasoning, which I fully support. Charred and smoked, so if you can set something on fire, please do. Sustainability, again, ties into it. So it's not just a health concern, it is a food and flavor concern too, because consumers in research do mentally think it tastes better. And then just the preparation. So it's not just what the food is how are you preparing it? So then you've got stuffed. You've also got going back to deconstructed. So deconstructed is you're putting your own sundae together, you're putting your own fruit salad together, like at the table in the restaurant. You know, if you see casseroles coming back, you should panic. And actually, I want to go back. One thing, so pickled, soured, and fermented, again, a lovely place for produce to hit. Again, why that is, and bold spicing, it's because the extremes on the palate come back. It is got a backbone of an economic basis why this occurs. So there's reasoning, there's these patterns that keep coming in. I know. Okay, get the little side, it's so cute. And I don't care, but I'm just kidding. Okay, so with beverages, cocktails right now are the rock star compared to, I'll just pull these up, non-alcohol and then add-ins and mixers. So I didn't put beers and wines up here because it's a little tiny bit harder to correlate, but cocktails are the rock star. Again, in a recovery, you want to see cocktails dominating research. If you start seeing domestic beer and wine, panic. So cocktails, I always love this, does anyone know what a pickleback is? It's a cocktail. Did you ever used to be a bartender or have a bartender kid, or you just hang out in bars, is that right? Okay. A pickleback is a bartender's drink, actually, so very few people, that's why only one person knew, very few people know what a pickleback is. It's a bartender drink that they drink after the bar is closed, and it's usually a shot of whiskey with a back of pickle juice. I know, do you see why not everybody's drinking this? But anyways, it's kind of cool. Session cocktails are historical. Again, here comes tea, carbonated. So just like if you can set things on fire, absolutely put smoke in these things. So if you're trying to get into the bar scene, which is where produce fits perfectly because there's a lot of shrubs, there's a lot of culinary cocktails. So produce fits in very well. Either smoke it, set it on fire, or bubble it. Add carbonation and you'll be fine. Non-alcohol, you've got plant waters. So we've got cactus water coming in, aloe water. There's broccoli water. I mean, there's a ridiculous amount. So coconut water, please, that was so 2014. You've got all sorts of other plant waters coming in. Switchels, again, are vinegar-based. So shrubs can be with alcohol. Switchels are without alcohol. They're kind of fun. But they're historical. So they're either going extreme one way or the another, but the thing they have in common is there's a history to them. You can tie them to a time or a location in the world. And then add in, so this is where produce comes in well. The secondary label or the tertiary label, actually with beverages, is snackifying, so adding texture, so unblended smoothies. If you can put in nitrogen, smoke, spice or heat, ginger, coffee fruit is actually being added. Again, here's carbonation, considered kind of an add-in if the drink normally isn't. Bitters, again, anything extreme. And then do something with the ice. Like, it's not just ice cubes anymore. It's infused with herbs, fruits, vegetables. It's absolutely fantastic. So I encourage you to hang out at bars more and see, like, expand, where your produce can go. So cuisines and factions also, some of the hottest cuisines coming into the States. In America, it's Deep South Appalachian Low Country cuisine. Watch for Cuban to be coming in more and more strongly now that travel's over there more. Nordic cuisine is still running hot. It's mostly in bakery, and it's mostly in the upper Midwest. Filipino is kind of coming in on the tail of Korean food. You've got Middle Eastern, regional Mexican. So if you do anything Mexican, do not just do Mexican. Make sure it's from a specific location from Mexico. That's what consumers want. They want to know it's more specific regional. And then Eastern Bloc EU, so Russia, Poland, Czech Republic. Lots of foods and flavors coming in from there. And then factions are families. So factions are things that can be absolutely global and universal. So anything artisan or house-made. Global vegetarian, so think Indian, Southeast Asian cuisines. Street foods coming in globally again. Global breakfasts. UK Asian breakfasts are the two that are kind of hitting hottest that you can align with. Comfort fusion. So again, cronut's kind of the poster child. So comfort fusion is two things you know and love, like a croissant and a donut, and now you've married them. So it's a very non-threatening way to have a fusion item. Single estate or farm food, very important to consumers. Again, anything extreme, pickled, sour, fermented, seasonal. Seasonal, like I said, is a much hipper place to be than just local and more reasonable. And then foraged. Again, get a cocktail, have them eat the mushrooms first. So how to play on the changing playground. The sustainability forecast. Technology sources are ricocheting, the ricochets are gaining ground. So what we're saying is there's new novel fiber, there's new novel, especially the protein sources like the pea proteins, the chickpea flours coming in. They're gaining a lot of ground in technology. Packaging technology itself is usually dictated by two things, sustainability issues or safety issues. Some of the consumer disconnects, like where they're not understanding certain topics, and confusion remains a big focus when we're watching behavioral research. Gen Z spending, so the 18 and under, who people are just starting to look at, and their value patterns are finally starting to be coming into focus compared to the other generations, because they're radically different actually than millennials. Generational and ethnic group spending is starting to be differentiated, especially around this category. Adversarial groups are actually focusing more and more around sustainability practices, so they like to call people out. Vegetable proteins are competing with the animal proteins for consumer attention. The fresh food focused convenience stores are total little rock stars right now. They're definitely stealing consumer focus from restaurants and retail. Negative health consequences for diets like paleo that villainize our food or food groups are being revealed more and more by research. Medical community and dietitians are kind of coming against these types of elimination diets or narrow diets, left, right, and center when we're tracking adversaries. So how do you combat some of the fatigue with people like tired of being told what to eat and tired of thinking sustainability has to be everywhere? So what's out is just generic green label statements. What's in is explaining why the product has the green statement to educate the consumer. If there's two products on a shelf and one package explains a little bit more of like where this thing came from, like that it's comes from this particular farm, they will pick the package that gives them a little bit more of the explanation. Marketing how a sustainability practice helps your company because they don't care. Market how a sustainability practice helps the consumer contribute to their community. Does that make sense? It's a little bit of a twist. And then promoting how your company's sustainability efforts helps the environmental community Empower consumers instead. Give them the control over bettering their environment and community by using your products. Do you understand? It gives them the power of saying, if you use our products, you're helping the community. Thank you.
Okay, that's a lot. So thank you very much to our speakers. We have time for like one, maybe two questions. And I don't think, are AV people in the back? If so, will you raise your hand? I don't think I have a Q&A mic. So especially choose yourself if you are a really good projector, audio projector. Sir,
Yeah.
I see you in the yellow.
Hi, Susan, can you speak to millennial versus Gen Z and how they're purchasing organic?
So how they view, is different than how they purchase. So in survey work, millennials 100% of the time will say, we love organic, we totally buy organic. When you look at behavioral research coming out of other institutes, when they actually follow them through the stores, they actually end up, they absolutely will buy organic if they can afford it. But what they will do is the higher priority to them, of course, is finances. So they will abandon parts of their organic belief system only because of finances. Gen Z has shown, even though they're not making, I mean, they're only 18, right? So they're still spending mom and dad's money a bit. But they only know organic and sustainable. They were born into it, so they don't know any different. So they will 100% buy less, but stick with organic. Does that make sense? So there's two different mindsets around it.
And I'll actually add to that as well.
Yeah, please.
What we see in our research is that the higher income millennials,
Yeah,
Susie's point,
yeah.
is heavily over-engaged with organic,
Yes.
without a doubt. So if you kind of tease apart millennials and
Yeah.
you break them apart into groups, from an income standpoint, you see very clear differentiation on purchasing behavior.
Yeah, they want to be dedicated, and verbally they are. It just, again, absolutely, it comes down to their income.
Okay, one more.
Oh my God. And we'll both be around too, so you can
All
flag
right.
us down.
Well, thank you very much to my panel, and thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Let me grab something.